This is my rainbow unicorn hat. Oh! Today the theme is my catalyst. So some of you might be thinking right now, what is a catalyst, Anna? Well, that's a great question. Let me tell you. Catalyst is basically something that causes a change or a reaction. Everybody has that moment, that thing, that event that happens to them in life that causes them to think in a different way and basically affects them for the rest of their lives, that just changes their life completely. So this is what I did. I go find somebody to interview on the street. I decided to go to the laundromat, and I walked in, nobody really stood out. So I walked across the street to the granary, and there was all these people standing outside. So they pointed me to Suzanne. This is her story.
I was a person who was addicted to cocaine and alcohol, and I was married to a man who was very much into the same thing. And then one day I got told that I had a brain tumor. That changed my life completely forever. Was shipped up to the hospital, a Swedish medical center, and the doctors had told me if I ever did cocaine again I would die. So I left and went back to Lamar, Colorado. That's where I'm from. And one day the guy that I was with decided that he didn't want to be with me anymore. He just didn't want a person who was going to be sick, and he wanted to have his lifestyle of the world. I had one day where I was on the floor and I was crying out to God, and he said, I heard something come behind me. I felt the arms come behind me, heard a whisper in my ear, and he says, I'll never leave you, forsake you, Suzanne. Man might, but I won't. And that changed my whole life, because then I really realized that there really was a God and that he really did exist. And so later on, got divorced from that guy, and then God brought somebody into my life, and I started going to church. I was going into church. I was on medication like Durand and Lyrica, and their seizure medications. And what happened is that they had a healing service at our church, and my husband that I was married to said, go get your healing. And 2 weeks prior to that, I asked the Lord if he would take this burden off of me, which was the Durand and the Lyrica, which was seizure medications, and I asked him if he would take this burden from me. So then when we were back at that church in that healing service, I went up there, and the man touched me, fell to the ground, felt like something left my body, and the next day the Lord told me that, your faith, you're healed. So he said you could throw away all your seizure medications, and I didn't have any repercussions from that, and that changed my life forever. And God is just so good. I can say that I don't have a tumor in my brain, and just that he could take those burdens off of people's lives. That changed me forever, and there's nothing I could say but give my testimony to other people and let them know that he is real.
So when I was talking to her, it was crazy. I could see it in her eyes, you know, that just how much she had changed and how her story was so important to her and how it had changed her life. And the part that I wish that I had kept filming, but because after this little interview, she continued to tell different stories that they were amazing. It was crazy, like some of the stuff that she's been through. I just wish I kept rolling, but I didn't. So considering how it turned out the first time, I decided to take to the streets again. Only in Salida can you go up to random strangers on the street and know you're not gonna die. Just saying. So this time I went downtown. I found this couple. I just walked up to them and started talking to them. And Magda and Mike. So this is their story.
We're actually fairly recent transplants to Salida, but coming to Salida was really committing to a changed life. And I suppose that changed for us. I mean, we've always lived a sort of eclectic life, right?
I think so.
In the 10 years we've been together?
Yeah. But Salida was important because it's a very health-conscious community, and we're into our health and wanted to kind of keep that going. And being around that and having people that are like-minded is really important for us to sort of stay focused and stay on track.
We've both been committed to this new philosophy. Well, we've been nurturing it, I guess, for a couple of years now, which is just being present in the moment and really trying to appreciate little details, including people and things, and I guess acts of grace. Life for us encapsulates that way of being, is that sort of momentary, deliberate presence.
Yeah.
He and I were talking about exactly that moment when you wake up and you say, you know, I don't want to live this life anymore, I need to live a different life. And defining that new life and taking that step forward, which usually, you know, has built in a lot of fear. And for us, that came probably a few years back. Like, you know, we're tired of keeping up appearances. We're tired of having to be a certain way politically.
Yeah, and I think that happened because we probably weren't comfortable with ourselves and, you know, making a facade around you and garnering different ideological perspectives. And
yeah, we're just like, you know, we just want to be. We just want to be and like not have to say we're this or that, not live in a box of ideas.
I think you have to be comfortable with yourself. I think you have to grow and be comfortable with who you are and like who you are, you know, actually enjoy who you are. When you look in the mirror, you're not like, oh gosh, this person again, but you have to actually,
exactly.
Everybody's different and you have to like the qualities about yourself or you won't be happy and people around you won't be happy.
And there's lots of good folks in Salida, I think, on the same path, and it's, you know, it's a good place to be.
They just got here and they're so happy to be here in Salida and they're ready for this change in their life. And I'm ready to leave. I'm excited to be gone and be in a new place. And it was just crazy that, like, how we're just in such different places in our lives.
Ask the question. When we went to Turkey for like the trip this year over spring break, it was like really life changing. Not like, oh God, I was saved. It was like, I was like, there are so many other people in this world and there are so many like lives and cultures and religions and all of just a whole bunch of other people out there that I never really thought about, and that like I was really closed-minded, like we're Americans, yeah. And I was like, they're just different people, and it was really cool just knowing that there are so many other places and things out there. There were like mosques on every like corner because it's an Islamic country, and so like the morning prayer like at 5 a.m. would wake us up every morning, and that was like, I just realized like that's different, and it was amazing because like the whole city participated in that, and that was everywhere in Turkey. And, like every place that we went there was mosques, and the morning prayer, the afternoon prayer, the dinner prayer, the evening prayer, there were all of those, and it was like just so different and cool to see that. People, like, some didn't even like get down and pray, like like we didn't know what to do at first, but people just keep going on with their lives. My cell phone didn't work there. And it was like really funny because our tour guide, his like cell phone would go off in the middle of our, like while he was teaching us about like, oh, this is the horse of Troy, and his like phone would go off and he'd be like, oh, hold on. And it's like, it's really funny because like my cell phone wouldn't work there, and it, like I felt so closed off from like people and things here, and then like they're like the same people, you know, they do the same things, and like we're the same, but like we're all totally different at the same time. We coexist. I hope I didn't ruin your project.
Yeah.
Did I?
No. So I've basically been through the same thing. I mean, I went and I had the same kind of realization that, you know, there's so much more out there. And so it was interesting to see her perspective on it, as well as knowing my perspective on it. So I've talked to some people that I met randomly on the street, and I've talked to some people that I personally know. So now it's time to tell a little bit about my story. So freshman year, my sister was pregnant about 6 months, and she lived in Springs, and so we brought her here to Salida. We moved her in, and a couple days after that, she was sick. Just some complications that went on, and So she finally, after other people were telling her she needed to go to the doctor, she went in and she had some tests, and then she came back here. And so then later that night, the doctor called and said, you need to come back in and we're going to admit you. And pretty soon after that, they get some more test results back, and they decide that they need to fly her out, flight for life, to Springs. And I'm at home, and my parents went to the hospital with her and came back, and you know, we're eating our Friday night hamburgers, and my parents come back, and I find out that she's being flown out, flight for life. We get in the car and we drive to Springs. Fastest car ride I've ever been in. I don't even remember it, but it was pretty late at night, so I think I was asleep too. But we get to Springs, and we get there to my sister's hospital room, and she looks like death. I mean, if she hadn't gone to the doctor that day, she would have died within 24 hours. Like that, like she would have been gone. And like that's just crazy to me. I mean, I walk in there and she just looks, I don't even know how to explain it. So this is like October 12th. Next day was my 15th birthday. And the next day, the 14th, on Sunday, they had to do an emergency C-section. And so the baby was born, Toriana, and she immediately went into the NICU, the baby ICU. My sister and my mom were up in Springs for a whole month. It's the first week, everything's, you know, it's going okay, as good as it can be. I mean, she's born 3 months early. So she was like this big, literally like so tiny. I mean, she's still developing. So the first week went okay, and then me and my dad went up that weekend to go see the baby and my sister, and I took all kinds of pictures. I mean, she had a ventilator on and everything, and so my sister would have to go in every day and just hold her to get that contact. And I took all these pictures, and those are the only pictures that we have. The next weekend I go up again, staying at my aunt's house, which is where my mom and sister are staying at. I'm awakened at like early morning, like 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm sleeping on the living room floor, and my mom wakes me up, and she's like, baby passed away this morning. And I just started bawling. I mean, pretty much everybody else kind of knew already, and I was pretty much the last person to know. And so when my mom took me to the hospital then, and my sister and my dad and my brother, and we were all there, and so I'm a wreck. Like I was just a mess. It's one of the biggest things that's happened in my life. I mean, it still affects me today, and it stayed with me. You know, it's gonna stay with me forever. It brought me so much closer to my sister. I mean, I was this close to having her gone, you know, so it definitely changed our relationship. We're a lot closer now, and I don't know, it's changed all of us in some ways or another. It's interesting to see how, you know, every little thing in life can affect something else or someone else. You know, every interaction has a reaction. Every little thing that you do affects someone else. And it's amazing to see how lives can be changed with just the smallest little things and the biggest things. Big events, little events. It doesn't matter. Life is made up of those moments that we cherish, and those moments that we will never forget.